That it's already a big step. The first advice would be to avoid ambiguity. Language is full of ambiguity, and just take, if I only say cock, what are you thinking of? Really?
What else?
Of course, man, what else?
Well, give us the other thing.
Making me blush over here. No. So, in the real world, there is lots and lots of context. So if I say, last week I went to a farm and there I saw the biggest cock I've ever seen. You know that I'm talking about the animal. But if I say, well, Sven, you have to pay attention, now I'm giving it to you. Last week I saw this porno movie and in it I saw the biggest cock I've ever seen. Then you know it's the other thing. The one you all thought of, even you.
Animal porno?
That's illegal, I will never confess to that. So in everyday life there's context for us to make sense. In applications, much text is isolated words. Menu comments essentially are isolated words. There's no context at all, so you get confused, or users get confused very easily. And wording, that's what it's called, picking out the word. That's a very difficult task. One example, let's say we're in a 3D rendering application, and you can have one model and different camera views on it. And you've got a command, view settings. So what is this command gonna do? Will it show you the settings of one of the views? Or will it let you view some general settings? Like, this is a situation to avoid, and like choosing a different name for the camera views, like perspective or something like that. The worst case would be that both things happen in different places of the application. So that one time it shows you general settings, one time it shows you the settings of the user. That's like a no. Second thing, call X, always X. So for each object, concept, action that you do in your application, choose a name and stick to it. As an example, my father got the login data for his internet connection from I think it's the biggest T-Com, the biggest provider in Germany. And we needed his login data to configure his email account. And in the documents, he got a passphrase. And the login screen asked for a password. And he looked at me and he said, you know, there it already begins. This passphrase and password, is that the same? I mean, sure, for us it's obvious, but average users tend to think that there are really differences in meaning when we use different words, and that's why we should avoid it. We pick one and stick to it. And this is a really hard task. Even if you're alone, it's hard, but when there are several developers, it's nearly impossible. And your best bet is to introduce an application lexicon. In it, you write down, you keep a record of all the terms that you agreed on. For this dialog window is called XY, and this one is ZA, and we will call that little blinking object always A. And assign someone to make sure that these terms are used consistently. And of course, this task is much easier if messages to the user aren't scattered around the application, but use a central message file. And then it's easier to make sure that the terms are used consistently. And get a technical writer, because again, writing, wording, keeping terms consistent, that's again a task of its own. And programmers aren't always very good writers, I'm sorry to say. And this is an example of of text inconsistency. This is from NeoOffice, which is an open office for the Mac, I think. And I wanted to insert a spreadsheet And I wanted to try out the little icons on the left, and the first one, the tooltips told me insert, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to insert an object, yay! And then I clicked on it, and then it says insert table, and I was like, no, I don't want to insert a table. So why would you cut off a tooltip? That would have been easy. Don't give less information in the tooltip. So, oh, sorry, that was a bit rushed. So we leave attention and consistency, and we go on to errors. Humans make mistakes. Even the Romans, errare humanum est. Keep that in mind. It would not change just because your application isn't apt to deal with user errors. So don't just ignore this. Prevent errors if you can. Don't let users invoke commands that they can't use for this object. I've learned 2 days ago that what was it, Inkscape, I think, doesn't do it. It doesn't depend on what you selected. All options are available, and this is a pain in the ass, even because you don't get the result. You need to know what you can do right now. So gray out menu items that aren't available and things like that. Also provide a sensible default. Don't ask users to take choices that they don't know the adequate answer to. In a text editor, if you ask in the save dialog, yeah, do you want ASCII or UTF-8? And to most people, this will be one of them. So set a default, which is the right thing in most of the cases, and you will, relieve users of this burden.
Which one would it be in this case?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I guess it depends on the context. No general answer, sorry. And don't let users enter freeform text. If you could be more specific. One example. The top one is what I use in my home-brewed blogging software, because I don't depend on the format, it's just I want to keep it the same, and it's very fast. The top one is faster. I would never use the top one if I really needed the format, and for people other than me. And the top one, I know the only user, and that's me, I know I can do it. And the bottom one, I make sure it's the right thing. So if you need a specific format for anything, and dates are a great example, then use lists, and they can't skip a digit, which would have been important or something like that. Of course, this takes a little longer, but you can't make an error here, and that's, in most cases, preferable. Second thing, helpful error messages. We can all learn a lot here. It's not like users commit errors just to, bug your application. It's because they really didn't know. And there's no need to bark at them. At least be polite. They are probably upset right now because they got an error for something that they want to do. If you can, if there's a very common error, and and there's a common source for the error, then provide a hint to solve the problem. An example would be on login screens. There is often, if the password didn't match, that you get a little hint as caps lock activated, and sometimes that's the reason. And the reminder is cool to look at it. It's simple. There are things where you can be more helpful than that. And really, guys, error codes. Error codes are for debugging, and only for debugging. This is when you've done debugging, then you get them out. Users never ever see it.
I strongly disagree on that. An error code provides you the ability to search in the source code what's happening.
Yeah.
You can also Google for it, which is nice.
Okay.
If it's a unique error, that's correct. Yes.
I specify, don't make errors. Don't let errors happen. No. No, that's hard. Sven, because I'm repeating it for the mic. Not for the video? Oh, well, okay, then not.
There should be a details button. There should be a details button so you can see.
That's a good one. So, Sven Gucke said that error codes are actually very good for Googling, which I agree on because they're normally more specific. And this guy put out that there should be a details button. So this is an excellent example for progressive disclosure in this case. So very well. You?
Yeah, I wanted to say, what do you do when the user calls you and then says there's an error? The first thing you ask is which error code or read me the exception or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
With the details button.
Yeah, okay. So this is essentially the details button for the error code would be the same for this one. So, yeah, geek names for errors. This is the example for it. This is again NeoOffice. It says here, so this is an example where you could get rid of the error code. It says error 503. And I was like, yeah, well, that's interesting, error 503. This is division by 0. And you could give that error a more telling name, like div by 0, which would have been 6 letters instead of 7 letters, error, colon, 503. So sometimes you can give a meaningful, a telling name to an error code, and then you should do. Third one, preserve the user's work. Never lose data. If you've ever written an email and then you wanted to send it and then something happened, crashed, connection lost, whatever, and you had to do it again, this is so annoying because you feel like you did that and you don't want to do it again. So never lose data. Provide an undo and a redo functionality for everything and make sure that it works because users will heavily rely on that. And if then suddenly it doesn't work, this is horrible. And users' work is also data that is entered in a dialogue. For example, the Amazon. I once I wanted to get a book, and I entered my my address, and then my bank account, and then I decided to change the address. I wanted to deliver to a different address, so I went back to change the address, and I had to fill in my bank account again. I mean, they changed that, I know. No?
I don't think they changed it, but I always thought it was for security reasons.
Yeah, I mean, and now they changed it. Now they keep the bank account in mind, so I think it must have been something else. Well, maybe it's security. I found it highly annoying because I had done that. I mean, they can remember a book I bought 5 years ago and recommend me others from the same author, but they can't keep in mind my bank account. So now we're done with the users as humans part. And if we take the common human factors into account, then we're already 1/2 of the way we went. Yeah, but still we are all individuals. I'm not. And we vary greatly in our experience with computers, in our experience in the task domain, in our age, gender. We have different cultural backgrounds. Some of us have disabilities. These are all ways in which we differ. And what is right for one user can be completely wrong for another one. And to get the flow of the interaction right and the interface and bottom layout, we need to define right for whom. Who is our user actually here? So that's what we're now going to look at. And it's also a quick introduction to user-centered design. Who's the user? Central question, first central question. Sometimes you know who the user is going to be because it's a contract job. So a client gave you a job to do, and well, then you know it. But in other cases, you have to choose the target users yourself. There are a variety of applications that just fail to do that. They think, hey, for everybody, our application is for everybody. But have you ever tried to please everyone? It's impossible. If you try to please everybody, you'll just make everybody unhappy. So it's a very hard thing to do, to please everybody. And the most grave distinction here is experience in the task domain and possibly experience with computers. So that's where the trade-offs lay. So you should define who your user